What's up, guys? It's Jay with Bearded Dad Fishing, and if you've been around fishing kayaks at all, you know they're not all created equal. Some are great tools for the jobs, while others might leave you swimming in regret, literally. So today we're going over the worst of the worst kayaks you should avoid at all costs. But first, dad joke of the day: why do dads take an extra pair of socks when golfing? In case they get a hole in one. And that dad joke is brought to us by Zach Brown of the Facebook group Kayak Fishing Dads. In fact, with over 32,000 members, I asked the guys on there what they think are the worst fishing kayaks ever, and they didn't hold back. These were rated the absolute lowest. And if your kayak's on the list, I'm sorry, man, but we can still be friends. And if you disagree with any of the kayaks on the list, make sure you comment down below. And the first worst kayak on our list are any Dolphin kayaks. I know you've heard the brand, you've seen it around. They're the super duper cheap kayak, and that's why a lot of people get them, because they're affordable. And if you don't know any better, or you don't know any other kayak manufacturers, or you just want to save some money, you end up with a Dolphin. And there's a lot of different brands or different styles of Dolphins. They got the sit-in kayaks, they have the sit-on-top kayaks. They even have some that are marketed specifically towards anglers, but Dolphin came up a ton of times when they were talking about the worst fishing kayaks. One of the biggest complaints about this kayak is the seat. It's an uncomfortable seat. If it has padding, it's super duper thin. And if you're not comfortable on the water, you're not gonna be out there for a long time. And let's face it, if you're over 30 years old, you can't sit uncomfortably for a long period of time. You're gonna have to cut your fishing trip short, or you're gonna have to stand up and stretch, and you just can't do these on this kayak. In addition to the poor seat, it's also pretty unstable, which is a given. They're shorter kayaks. There's not a whole lot of them that are over 10 feet, and people complain about that all the time. And along with it being unstable is it has lower weight capacities. So if you're a bigger dude, I would skip right over this brand of kayaks, because you want to be comfortable on the water. You want to feel safe and confident on the water. And in being on these kayaks, it's really hard to do that. And the last complaint about these kayaks is that it tracks terribly. I mean, they don't advertise that they're great trackers, but they're shorter. There's probably not a whole lot of R&D that goes into the kayaks, but they track really poorly. And if you don't have a rudder, if you don't have some other way to steer yourself, tracking is what you have. And if it tracks bad, it goes slow, it feels like a barge, and that's not good for anybody. But I will tell you guys some of the upsides of this Dolphin kayak. First and foremost, it's super duper affordable. So you can get into it if you really want to test the waters and you don't know that you love kayak fishing, then you can get into it with a Dolphin. Again, remember, it might ruin your experience, so that doesn't mean it's a great answer for everybody, but it is affordable. It's also a minimal setup. It doesn't have a lot of fishing features, so you're not going to be messing around with electronics and wiring and a whole lot of stuff. It doesn't have high weight capacity, so you're not going to take a bunch of gear with you. But if you want to have a minimal setup, 2 rods and like 2 boxes, 3,600 boxes of tackle, then, it might work for you on some smaller, calmer lakes and small ponds. And the second worst kayak on our list are Lifetime kayaks. I know you've seen these around. They're at Walmart, at Sam's Club, online, and a lot of people have Lifetime kayaks. However, it came up a bunch of times on our post on our Facebook group, Kayak Fishing Dads. A lot of people get into it for the same reasons they get into a Dolphins. It's widely available and it's really cheap. However, once they get into it, they realize, man, this is pretty uncomfortable. All right, it has uncomfortable seats. If it has a cushion, they're very thin cushions. It's not gonna hold you over for a long time on the water. In addition to that, it has limited upgrade potential. There's not a whole lot you could do to make it a better ride, to add more rails, to make it a better experience overall. It does have some rails, some flush mounted rod holders, so it has features, a lot of them that you can use for fishing, but that's pretty much gonna be what you get. And just like the Dolphin, this is not for bigger anglers. If you need something with a bigger, higher weight capacity, just avoid the Lifetime kayaks. They're generally in that 325 to 375 pound weight capacity, but being that they're thinner, being that they're narrower, it's not gonna be great for big guys. You might actually tip the kayak over pretty easily. But of course, there are some pros with the Lifetime kayaks. Number one, like I said, they're super affordable. If you're on a really, really tight budget and you're not a bigger dude, then you could look at these kayaks. If you're fishing really small waters, small ponds, then it might be worth looking at. However, if you're shopping for a second kayak for some small children or even some teenagers, this might make a great kayak. Kids are less likely to tip it over because they're lighter and they're smaller. And lastly, one of the lightest kayaks you can get. So if you're looking for a real throw and go, something you can drag through the woods, something you can just toss on the roof rack of your car, then maybe this kayak is for you. And the third kayak on our list, and I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of heat for this one, but the group has spoken, Ascend Kayaks. You've seen these if you shop at a Cabela's, if you shop at Bass Pro Shops, you've seen Ascend Kayaks. And honestly, a lot of times, it's the first kayak people even are exposed to because they're already at Bass Pro. They're looking at these Ascend Kayaks. But the group was adamant that Ascend Kayaks were one of their biggest regrets when they bought it. Ascend are rotomolded kayaks. However, the biggest complaint is that they were extremely brittle. The plastic, though rotomolded, it was very thin, so cracking happens quite a bit. Leaving it out in the sun, which you shouldn't do anyways, but leaving it out in the sun made it more prone to cracking in a shorter amount of time versus kayaks that have a thicker hull. This thinner plastic also gives it a lot of warping issues, which is extremely common with the Ascend kayaks, and therefore it gives it a poor resale value. Because a lot of times we're buying kayaks, you know you're not going to keep your kayak forever, but when you're ready to get rid of it, you don't want to take a huge hit of 70%. And yes, this even includes the Ascend 133X tournament kayak. A lot of guys get this because it has an advertised higher weight capacity. However, bigger guys have said they get on this kayak and it is extremely tippy. It has very poor secondary stability, which is very important for any kayak, but specifically for a big boy kayak that flaunts a high weight capacity. On the flip side though, for the pros, that low resale value means you can buy a used one for really cheap. Another pro is that because it's widely available at Cabela's and Bass Pro Shops, if you buy a new one and you have warranty issues, you can get it serviced at any Cabela's or Bass Pro Shops. You can also pick up a replacement if you need a replacement, so that is one of the benefits of it. And lastly, though it's not great for bigger guys, it might work great for smaller dudes. So if you're under 250 pounds, 200 pounds, 150 pounds, this might be something you can consider. Or again, for a teenager or a young child, this might be a great first kayak for them. And number 4 on our list of worst fishing kayaks is anything by the Brooklyn Kayak Company. This came up a ton of times on our posts. People regret buying this kayak if they had it. One of the biggest complaints is that it's a private label kayak, which means they're made in bulk overseas and they're shipped out to retailers around the world. This makes them not original, not innovative, and not having anything that you can't find even on any of these other brands that we're talking about. These are also pretty significantly more expensive than the Sun Dolphin, the Lifetime, and the Ascend kayaks. And because people tend to sell them pretty quickly when they get on them, again, it has a poor resale value as well, which on the flip side, as a positive, like I mentioned with the other kayak, you can probably buy one at a steal. If you really wanted one of these kayaks or you didn't want to spend a lot of money, you could buy one at a really good price used. Again, you're not going to get a whole lot of bang for your buck, but it's going to be a cheap kayak. And another pro is that they have a lot of tandem kayaks. So if that's your thing and you really want to go on a tandem kayak, then check these out. They have regular paddle ones that are tandem. They have pedal ones that are tandem. And don't misquote me by saying that all overseas kayaks are terrible. No, I'm talking about this specific one. Since it's made by a no-name brand, no-name manufacturer overseas. That's what makes this kayak just unremarkable. And number 5 on our list of the worst fishing kayaks, and I feel like I'm going to get hate for this one too, HooDoo kayaks. A lot of people mention this kayak, and a lot of people know about this kayak because it is highly researched when people are starting out kayak fishing. Again, low price really gets people interested in it, and that's typically what gets them buying this kayak. They do offer pedal drives as well, again, for that really low price value, but the pedal drives are clunky, they're not fast, and a lot of people complain that they break in a relatively quick time period. Add that to the poor customer service that people experience, and you got yourself a recipe for disaster. They're not very helpful when it comes to replacing your kayak or getting it fixed or having issues with the drive and so on. But there are some pros to HooDoo, so I'll give them that. First and foremost, when it comes to the pedal drives, you can decide between a prop-driven drive or a fin drive. They have both options and they both fit inside the hull of the kayak. So if you like one over the other, you can pick it and not have an issue. They are rotomolded kayaks, so they got that going for them. So they're a little more rigid, they could put up with more abuse, and they should last longer as far as the hull of the kayak is concerned. And again, they're low cost, so that's also a benefit to them if you're really on a tight budget, or if you're looking for a very, very low cost pedal drive, then you can check them out. But again, keep all that stuff in mind. The clunky drive, the poor customer service, the fact that it doesn't have a whole lot of features like the other kayaks. So just keep that in mind if this is something you want to get. And the 6th worst kayak on our list is a specific kayak and not a general brand. It's the Vibe Sea Ghost 130. And overall, Vibe is a pretty good kayak. A lot of people got them and they love them. However, specifically this kayak, the Sea Ghost 130, came up several times on our post. And the biggest complaint a lot of people have with this kayak is the lack of stability. It boasts a very high weight limit at 550 pounds. However, when bigger anglers get on this kayak, it feels super tippy and like they're gonna go over at any second, and it makes them feel uncomfortable. Part of it is that it doesn't have very good secondary stability, but also it's because it's a narrower kayak. It's not nearly as wide as some of the other ones. Some of the other kayaks are looking at 36 inches wide, 38 inches wide. This one is around 33 to 34 inches wide, so it is much narrower, making it a little more tippy. And then you add on top of that a higher seat and a bigger angler with a higher center of gravity. Yeah, it's not gonna make for a very comfortable, stable ride for any bigger dude. In addition to that, it also has a sort of outdated design. There's not a whole lot of new innovations coming from Vibe right now. You got your accessory rails, you have your rod holders, you have a little bit of storage in this one versus some of the other options, but there's not any new innovations when it comes to this kayak. That said, it does have some positives as well. It has a built-in rudder, which is fantastic. You can install your own rudder on there, which even with a paddle kayak, a rudder is super helpful because it helps you direct yourself in a drift with the wind, just to orient yourself so you can face the way you want to face when you're out on the water. In addition, like I said, it has storage. It has a lot more storage than some of these other options on the list. You have a front hatch, you have a rear tank well, you have more rails. It is a little bit of a higher class of kayak. Even though the features aren't super innovative, it has more storage than some of the other options we looked at. And lastly, the fact that a lot of the complaints came from bigger anglers like myself, 250, 300 pounds and up. So if you're a smaller angler, maybe this kayak's not gonna be so unstable for you if you're under 200 pounds, so maybe check it out. And kayak number 7 on our list of worst fishing kayaks according to Kayak Fishing Dads is the Three Waters Big Fish 105 and the 120. Yes, I talk about these kayaks a lot in some of my other videos. However, these were mentioned a lot of times in the comments of the Kayak Fishing Dads Facebook post. The biggest complaint about this kayak is not its stability, it's not its price, it's the fact that it is super heavy. A lot of people don't look at the weight before buying this kayak, or they think it's not a big deal, but these kayaks clock in at 99 pounds for the 105 and even heavier for the 120. So you got to think to yourself way ahead of time, can you handle a kayak this heavy? How are you going to transport this kayak? Are you throwing it on a roof rack? If you are, get away. Do not buy this kayak because it's going to be a pain in your back, literally, to rooftop this kayak. If you're throwing it on a truck bed, if you got a trailer, then that's fine. You're not going to sweat with these issues. Just make sure you consider how you're going to transport it and that you get a good heavy-duty kayak cart, something like the Viver kayak cart, which is very inexpensive, but you need something to take it to and from the water without breaking your back. And part of the reason it's so heavy is because it's a wider kayak. So it's wider, therefore it's stable. It has the trimaran hull, that cathedral hull design, making it super stable, but also making it paddle terribly. It's so wide that if you're gonna paddle this kayak, think again, you probably don't wanna paddle this for any long distance. Get a motor on there or buy the PDL version. Both the 105 and the 120 are available in PDL at a good price. And the last complaint is several users stated that their rudder cables broke off inside of the kayak, so they had to repair that. They got the parts for free from Three Waters, but it's a pain in the butt to fix that. And one of the pros of this kayak is, like I stated, it's very stable. So if you're not paddling this thing and you're gonna throw a motor on, then get this kayak if you're a bigger dude because it's very stable. That cathedral hull design does wonders for bigger guys on the water as far as stability is concerned. And like I mentioned, it comes in PDL in the 105 and the 120 for a really good price point, if you're looking to start somewhere for a pedal drive version, maybe look at the Three Waters Big Fish 105 and 120. And lastly, the pedal drive it comes with is actually pretty good. There's not a lot of complaints about this pedal drive. A lot of people have put it through the ringer with really good results. And the last kayak on our list of worst fishing kayaks, and I feel like I'm also gonna get heat for this one, but the group has spoken. It's the Hobie PA 12 and PA 14. These kayaks are well known. They have well documented issues all over YouTube, Facebook, wherever you look. But let's start with the first things first. It is incredibly expensive. You're talking about $5,000 or $6,000 for this kayak, depending what drive you get. And that's both for the PA 12 and the PA 14. So they're very expensive. A lot of people off the rip are not gonna get this kayak. It's generally not gonna be a first kayak for a lot of people. But because it's so expensive, you would think you're gonna get a fantastic product, no issues, the R&D's like top of the line. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case for a lot of anglers lately. Again, well-documented issues. First and foremost, the hulls have been known to crack up and down this kayak. I got a good friend who his PA 14 cracked terribly only after a year of having it on the water. Huge cracks that came out of nowhere on the deck, resulting in a ton of water that got into his hull while we were out fishing together. In addition to having well-known issues with the hull and cracking, it also has a lot of issues with the fin drives. A lot of people have said that their fin drives have just fallen apart on the water. Completely catastrophic failure where you now have to paddle this incredibly heavy kayak back to the launch. So the fin drive's an issue, the hull's been an issue, and quality control in general has been an issue, and people left and right are regretting spending so much money for this kayak, expecting a fantastic product and just having issue after issue after issue. Even though the warranty is really good, and from everything I've heard, the warranty is being honored, they're still having to be without a kayak for, months at a time sometimes. But on the flip side, let's talk about the pros, because this kayak does have some pros. The warranty, like I mentioned, is actually pretty good. I haven't heard from anyone that said the warranty didn't hold up, they didn't honor the warranty. Even my buddy, they honored his warranty 2 times. The first time for the cracked hull, the second time for issues with the rudder system. In addition to the good warranty, it has fantastic stability, fantastic for big guys. It holds up to 550 pounds or 600-pound weight capacity. So it's known to have really good stability and handle choppy water. In addition to that, the seat is one of the most comfortable seats people talk about. The seat by itself is almost $1,000 on this kayak, but it's very comfortable, very adjustable. You sit high up on this kayak, so it is a really comfortable ride. In addition to the stability, Hobie has a lot of great features on their kayaks. Hobie's been known to be innovative as far as their open deck space, their H-rails, making it customizable almost like infinitely. Their transducer shield, a lot of really great features on these kayaks that you're getting. And lastly, it's also a revolutionary company. Regardless of whether or not it's changed hands in the last couple years, Hobie has revolutionized the way we think about kayak fishing in a lot of ways over the last 2.5 decades. So let me know in the comments below which kayak you guys avoid at all costs. And if you disagreed with any of the models or brands of kayaks I mentioned in this video, comment down below, let me know, we'll get talking. And if you want to see the 10 things you don't need to start kayak fishing right now, check out this video right here. So till next time guys, peace and God bless.